words of the Master. The words of the Master. We want to continue with our look at the things that Messiah has said. We want to look at his words. We want to not only look at his words, but we also want to look at the situations and circumstances that caused him to speak, and see if we can draw any conclusions from the words that he spoke. So we'll go ahead and read. Let's go ahead and just read through here the book of John, chapter 4. Let's start at verse 5. And let's read all the way down to verse 42. John chapter 4.
4, okay. Yeah.
Verse 5, all the way down to 42.
So when he came to a city of Samaritan called Shechem, near the piece of land Jacob gave to his son Joseph, and Jacob's fountain was there. So Yeshua, being wearied from the journey, was sitting thus at the fountain. It was about the 6th hour. A woman of Samaritan came to draw water. Yeshua said to her, "Give me to drink," for his top ones had gone off into the city to buy food. The woman of Samaritan therefore said to him, "How is it that you, being a Yehudi, ask a drink from me, a woman of Samaritan? For Yehudi do not associate with the Shamaroni." Yeshua answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of Elohim, and who it is who says to you, 'Give me to drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Master, you have no vessel, and the well is deep. From where then do you have living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself and his sons and his cattle?" Yeshua answered and said to her, "Everyone drinking of this water shall thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water I give him shall certainly never thirst. And the water that was given him shall become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life." The woman said to him, "Master, give me this water, so that I do not thirst, nor come here to draw." Yeshua said to her, "Go, call your husband and come here." The woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Yeshua said to her, "You have well said, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Master, I see that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you people say that in Jerusalem is the place where one needs to worship." Yeshua said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you shall neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, because the deliverance is of the Yehudi. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshiper shall worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father also does seek such to worship him. Elohim is a spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know the Messiah is coming, the one who is called Anointed. When that one comes, he shall announce to us all." Yeshua said to her, I am speaking to you, am he." Did I say that right? "I who I'm speaking to am he." And upon his top ones came Upon this, his taught ones came, and they were marveling, and he was speaking with a woman. However, no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why do you seek with what do you seek with her?" The woman then left her water jug and went away to the city, and he said to the men, "Come, see a man who told me all that I have done. Is this not the Messiah?" They went out of the city and were coming to him. But in the meantime, his taught ones were asking him, saying, "Rabbi, eat." And he said to them, "I have food to eat which you do not know." Then the taught ones said to each other, "Did anyone bring him food to eat?" That's weird. And nobody touched the switch. Oh man. Okay. Yeah. He said to them, "I have food." My bad. 33. Then the top one said to each other, "Did anyone bring him food to eat?" Yeshua said to them, "My food is to do the desire of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. Do you not say, there are still 4 months and the harvest comes? See, I say to you, lift up your eyes and see the fields, for they are ripe for harvest already. He who is reaping receives a reward and gathers fruit for everlasting life, so that both he who is reaping and he who is reaping rejoice together. For it is the word. For in this the word is true. One sows and another reaps. I sent you to the reap for that which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labors. And many of the Shemaroni of the city believeth in him because of the word of the woman who witnessed. He told me all that I have done. Therefore, when the Shemaroni came to him, they were asking him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. And they said to the woman, "We no longer believe because of what you said, for we ourselves have heard, and we know that this is truly the Messiah, the Savior of our world."
Okay, all right, very good. So let's go back up here and look at a few things that we are able to see from all that we have looked at here. Let's go back up to verse, first couple verses up here. It's interesting when we look over here. Read again verses 7 and 8.
7 and 8. And a woman of Shamaron came to draw water. Yeshua said to her, "Give me to drink." For his taught ones had gone off into the city to buy food.
Okay, so it's interesting, first of all, when we see Yeshua is kind of just hanging out over here by this well. I feel like Yeshua is kind of being who he is and having the understanding that he has. He probably knew that this particular woman was coming. He basically was waiting for her. He's waiting for her because it's not like he's getting water from the well. He's at the well. You go to the well to get water. But he don't have a vessel. He don't have anything to get the water out with.
That's an interesting perspective.
What's he doing there? He just bought a water cooler, but he has no cup. He don't have a cup for the water, right? And so he waits there. Maybe he's just, if I'm saying if he's in his divineness, he's waiting for a moment. If he's just, just in his regular humanness, he's waiting for somebody, I guess, to help him, right? He's waiting there. And when this woman does come, this Samaritan woman, she comes to get water, and he says, let me get a little something. Hook me up, right? Give me to drink. Give me to drink. I want to look over in Ephesians. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 1, verse 11 and 12. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 11 and 12.
In whom also we did obtain an inheritance, being previously ordained according to the purpose of him, working all matters according to the counsel of his desire. Verse 12, for us to be the praise of his esteem, those having first trusted in Messiah.
Okay, so here in verse 11, it says being previously ordained. Being previously ordained. When we think about, when we think about, what happened to the,
I think the lights, you might have done some work.
Ephesians 1, 11 and 12. So we're talking about the idea of being previously or preordained. The Most High, who in his choosing takes into account what he knows that we will do. We talked about, and looking at the Torah portion, the idea of choosing. We can be previously ordained because of the Most High being outside of time and space will know which way we'll choose, even though we haven't done anything yet. And so in the same way, Yeshua knows the choices that this woman is going to make that are going to cause her to be in the place where he needs for her to be when he's physically thirsty. So he goes and hangs out by the well, and then along comes her, right? And so when we look at, when we go down, look at verse 9. Read verses 9 and
Ephesians,
back to John,
okay.
chapter 4, verses 9 and 10 again. Here.
Okay. The woman of Samaritan therefore said to him, how is it that you, being a Yehudi, ask a drink from me, a woman of Samaritan? For Yehudim do not associate with Samaritan.
Read verse 10 also.
Yeshua answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of Elohim and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water.
Okay, very good. So it's interesting when we look at this lady's response to the situation that's happening over here. In terms of what she says, for Yahudim don't associate with the Samaritans. It's interesting when we look at this. She brings up this custom, right? This custom, because I'm not sure exactly what law she's referring to. If you know what law she's referring to, go ahead and put that down in the comments. But we know for a matter of fact that there is, in fact, a custom that being a part of Israel, being a Yahudim, they don't associate with these Samaritans. It's interesting. Let's look really fast over in Matthew chapter 10, verse 5. Matthew chapter 10, verse 5. Matthew chapter 10 and verse 5. What's that
One
say?
verse?
Yeah, just
Okay.
one verse.
Yeshua sent the 12 out, having commanded them, saying, do not go into the way of the nations, and do not enter into the city of the Samaritan.
Okay, very good. So when we look over here, what the Samaritan lady here expects to happen when she comes across Yeshua, who, by the way, she's able to recognize his affiliation just based on looking at him. I guess he had a certain look about him. I don't know if his clothes looked like he was Jewish or whatever. Like, why was she able to know that, oh, I'm surprised that you're gonna ask me to give you water because you're who you are and I am who I am. She expected for Messiah to behave along the lines that he instructed his own disciples. He sent his disciples out and he said, don't go to the Gentiles and not to the Samaritans either, he said to them. But here he is hanging out where he knows this is basically the Samaritans' territory. This is where they be at. If you sit here for any length of time, there's going to be some Samaritans that come by. And so he tells his disciples, don't go by the way of the Samaritans where you know they're going to be at. Maybe he just said that so that he could go and have this moment. I don't know. This is a different context. I'm just saying, like, and they wasn't there either, by the way. The disciples wasn't there. And when they come back, they're like, what's he doing talking to? Why didn't nobody say nothing to him either? It was like we could tell in the text. The inspiration wants for us to know that amongst themselves, they wondered, what is Messiah doing talking to this lady? But not only that nobody said anything to him about it. But it's interesting that, when we look over at Matthew chapter 5, chapter 10, that in chapter 10, verse 5, we have this distinction. He says, don't go to the Gentiles, but also don't go to the Samaritans. Why is there two? Why is there two things? Are Samaritans Gentiles? Aren't they part of the nations too? Well, actually, there's kind of different thoughts as to who, in fact, are the Samaritans. Because you look on the map, it's inside of actually Israel proper, where the Samaritans are. In fact, it will be something that when you think about the dividing of the kingdoms, it's basically northern kingdom. It's a part of the northern kingdom. So when you think about these varying thoughts of who the Samaritans are, you have those who say, well, those are actually Israelites who were part of the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes. Some say that they're Israel. Some say that they're a total different group of people. I think that when we think about the Samaritans in regards to what they do, we understand that they have a tradition that's connected to the Torah. The Samaritans do. There are some slight variations. There's some slight variations to what they do, which, by the way, would be enough for one who follows after the Torah to reject the Samaritans based on some of the fact that they have changed, altered the ways of the Most High.
You got some comments?
Let's see what we have here. Nehemiah 4 and 12, Ezra 4, 1 through 5. The Samaritans troubled those who wanted to rebuild the temple of Jerusalem. Samaritans would be what is considered, right, a mixed race. Yes, these are the thoughts that they're a mixed race. Also, but I'm saying also there's also thoughts that they're just a whole other people, like implants, and don't have anything to do with Israel whatsoever. There's varying ideas as to who these people actually are. They themselves have a claim, which we see in the conversation here, and we also see how they're treated. But to me, I thought it was interesting that they weren't lumped into Gentiles.
They were like a separate thing.
He mentioned them as a separate entity from the Gentiles.
Only thing I can think of is probably because they were more immediate to him. So maybe like the contact with them is like we live in Pittsburgh. So somebody from Pittsburgh, you know, so maybe
Yeah.
because they were among them, it's like don't even go to them. Like how we live in Pittsburgh, we don't associate with everybody in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. We try to find people who are like Israel.
Yeah.
And not like people, and then the nations is probably far off. You got to go a distance to deal with them.
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
I mean, Samaritan it still exists over there, and they, they kind of have their Torah only, right? They only do Torah.
They're Torah only, yes. They don't even acknowledge anything other than the Torah.
First couple.
Yeah, and it's interesting actually to have a Samaritan Torah, which there's variations, and there's slight variations when you look at the say for instance the Masoretic text and the Samaritan text. There's variations, there's slight variations, but sometimes when you think about those slight variations, as slight as they may be, certain things. Like for instance, a main thing that even is spoken of here is the fact that the Mount Gerizim being the place where the basically replacing Jerusalem. The Most High said where He wanted for His sacrifices to be made. And, just by the simple fact of you having this other place, is a violation. It's a direct violation to what the Torah says. And so, again, when we look at the kind of the thought process of the people, whether we think that they are a mixed group of people, even when you think about the way that the Samaritan woman is describing, the well there. I guess that's misleading, because when you read verse 12 in John, man.
Oh, back in John. Okay. Is that 4, right?
4 and 12, yeah.
Okay. It says, "Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, and his sons and his cattle?"
Okay, so she says our father. Is she saying our father as hers, but not Yeshua's father? Or is she including him in the our? Is she acknowledging the fact that Jacob was all of their father? Or is she trying to say that he's my father only? It's interesting. We can't know what she's thinking there, but she could really be saying, like, talking to Yeshua as if he's the one who's the outsider. Or she could be including herself into all of both of them together. It's hard to say, but the idea is the fact that she does, in her traditions, she has a connection to Jacob, and she has a right to be, as far as she's concerned, there, with the water. And so it's interesting when we look at Yeshua's response to all of this, because as he does, again, does he drink the water? Does he ever drink water? I can't remember right now. Does he ever drink water? He says, "Give me water," and then they get into this back and forth. Does he ever actually drink water? Because he goes straight to the Spirit right now in verse 13. He flips over. Like, what, did he ever want water? Did he want for her to give him spiritual drink? Like he knew he was only able to give.
Wait, huh?
Did he ever drink water? Did he ever drink water? He said, "Give me water." That's how he started the conversation. And then now, by the time it gets to verse 13, he's answering her as it regards to this living water.
I don't even want that water.
He could have, because you got to remember up in the verse 6, and Yaakov's fountain was there. So Yeshua, being wearied from the journey, he was a man still. Mm-hmm. They had a long journey. Was sitting thus at the fountain about the 6th hour. Yeah. So his disciples went out to go get food. He was weary, so he found the well.
Yeah,
He wearied from a journey, so I feel like he did want something to drink.
I feel like he wanted something to drink too, but I'm just saying, did he drink any water though?
Oh, don't say.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he's just like he's in his divine purpose over here. Because if we remember later, they're like, we went to get food. Like, you want some of this food? And he don't want the food.
I think about people who don't eat or drink, like when you go to something, maybe at a dairy bank, you're like, why don't you eat something? They're like,
I'm saying Yeshua is so spiritual. And I'm not even saying it in a bad way. I'm just saying that he asked the lady for a drink. And once they get into the idea of the physicalness, he immediately flips it to the spiritual thing and deals with her in terms of this living water. This living water, right? If you knew the gift of Elohim that you sitting up here talking to, you would be trying to ask me to give you something to drink. And so when we think about this living water, right, that he speaks of, which he's obviously speaking about the Spirit. He's speaking about the Spirit. But when we think about water, right, let's go over here and look at, because I'm saying that he's definitely talking about the Ruach, which we know is the Torah in our hearts. And so go look at pull up the dictionary there. Pull up the dictionary. What? He definitely flipped the script. He was totally on the physical. He asked her a physical question. He said, "I'm thirsty." The context helps us to understand that he was weary. He didn't have no food. That's where the disciples was. They was off getting food. A ploy to call the lost Samaritans back to the true way. She spread his name and power among the Samaritan people. Yes. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happened. Pull up the dictionary. Go into the Strong's and put in there Hebrews 84:51. I don't know if if you can see that.
Wait, the Strong's one. Hold on.
Strong's, yes. The Hebrew 8451.
I might need to download that. Hold on.
Yeah, you got that up on the screen there?
Oh, it's on the screen?
Okay, very good. Torah.
There we go.
Torah there is a precept, a statute, the Decalogue or the Ten Commandments, Pentateuch, the law, right? That word Torah is translated as law. But click on where it says from there, yes. So its root, the roots of the word Torah is Yara. Yara, which literally means to flow. The word Yara don't mean water. There's another word that means water. But this word means to flow as water. So the same way that water flows, that's what it's trying to get across with this word that's Yara. Transitively to throw, to lay or throw an arrow. If you throw an arrow, the way that the arrow moves through the air is the idea that you get when you think about this word Yara, which is the root of Torah. And so the idea that makes up the word Torah is this idea that deals with the ability to flow, to move uninhibited in a particular direction, right? To flow. Interestingly enough, when we think about the Ruach, which is the wind, the wind, the Ruach, the spirit, the wind, we read last week about the wind moving where it wills to move in a particular direction. It's something that kind of flows, the wind does. And so it's interesting when we think about this living water that Yeshua is speaking about, and this thing that if you drink of this thing, it will in fact fill you and cause you to be a fountain of this thing. Right? You won't be he's not saying that you're going to be like a well or a fountain, right? This is all hyperbole, right? But the source that you tap into will fill you and cause you to actually be kind of facilitator of the thing that filled you. And you won't be thirsty, and you'll be able to lead, show others how they're able to tap in to the thing that filled you. And so again, the master teacher who's sitting here by this well, in his divine providence and knowledge of things that are getting ready to happen that haven't happened yet, sitting by this well waiting for this lady to come so that he can give her. It's interesting that similarly to what we saw last week in terms of Yeshua giving these very important jewels to Nicodemus during this private meeting that he was having. He was giving Nicodemus this lesson about this thing that was so important when we think about our entry into the kingdom. And here again we see the same type of a thing happening, where Messiah is given this important meeting, this important lesson to this meeting that there's nobody there. except for him and this lady, who's not even just a regular lady. She's a Samaritan lady. I'm sure she's a very fine lady, but she is a Samaritan. I know. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that too, right? And so, when Messiah does this, when Messiah goes into this spiritual aspect, the lady, she's ready now. She heard what Messiah had to say. And read verse 15 there, 4:15, John.
It says, the woman said to him, Master, give me this water, so I do not thirst, nor come here to draw water.
Okay, now, I don't know exactly if she got it right here necessarily. Maybe she really just don't want to have to come with her containers of water anymore and fill them up. Maybe she's still on the literal. Like, and she's like, okay, if there's a way that I could just quench my thirst one time and don't have to come back here again, let's do that.
Turn on the tap. Don't have to, it's gonna do any work.
Or should you just don't even have to be thirsty because you, like you said, turn on the tap. It's like he's not putting no plumbing in her house. Like he's giving her this thing that's going to cause her to be able to become a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. She had to have known this. She had to have known at this point that they're dealing with metaphysical things over here. I think. I'm just gonna say it. And so Messiah, being who he is, because he's like this, right? He gives her these jewels, and she presumably is ready to accept these jewels. And he says, "Well, there is this matter. I got this water to give you. It's everlasting. You take this, you'll never be thirsty again. But what? If you want to deal with this, go get your husband. Go get your husband, bring him back here. We're going to deal with things properly. I'm not going to sit up here and deal with some other man's situation. Go get the husband, bring him back, and then we could talk some business."
Yeah.
Messiah, he goes again, and he goes to the bottom of the matter. Right? He gets right down to the meat and the proverbial potatoes. Over here, call your cousin, call your husband, and then come here. You know, it's cool. And she say, I don't have a husband. Now when we look over here, and this is when the miracle actually happens, by the way. It's interesting when we look at the interaction between Messiah and this lady, and also the interactions that we'll see later when Messiah, when the lady goes and tells the people about Messiah. Typically, Messiah goes and he's healing people, he's raising people from the dead, he's causing blind people to see, he's causing all of these miraculous things to happen. Here, he's really just talking to the lady. But there's miracles happening, though, and it's just his words. It's just his words, but something miraculous happened. He went down and stared into this lady's soul and knew everything about her. And he said, I know. You speak well. You have no husband. You had 5 of them in the past. And it seems like there's a 6th one, right? There's this other guy who, he's not even your husband. You had 5, you already had 5. And then there's this guy that you got right now, and he's not your husband. What's the deal over here? And by the way, when we look at this, people sit up here and talk about divorce and all of this. I don't know how you have 5 husbands. He said you had 5 husbands. and he seems like he's acknowledging that she had 5 husbands. You've had 5 husbands. Now either they all died. Oh, but then there's the case of there's this one who you're with currently who's not your husband. So, people need to think about these things when they come up with these strange doctrines of what equals a marriage and how many marriages can you actually have that are valid. This lady had 5 husbands, and then she had this other situation with another man who wasn't her husband. However, this thing that happened to this lady was in fact miraculous to her, because he was able to again look at this lady and know who she was. And this to her was something that put her over the top. And if she didn't understand the spiritual significance of what was going on previously, she most certainly understood at this point. She said in verse 19, I see you are a prophet. She understood that she was dealing with someone that was more than just this strange man who was sitting by the well. Here, put this up on the screen here, what Shul is saying here. What's that say? The comment. Okay, let's see. Verse 11 is deep, though. Even with her past, Yeshua acknowledged her soul, and she becomes the vessel to spread the message of the living water. Yes, and I think that the idea here is the fact that, you know, a lot of times people think about their journey and want to, you know, disqualify themselves based on their situations. Mm-hmm. But Messiah, you know, he's not bypassing these things, but I think what he is doing is, as the light, he's being a light. And so a light will bring to light that which is in the darkness. When he talks to people, who are obvious sinners, he says, from this point, go and sin no more. Mm-hmm. As simple as that. So when we think about, our path, our journey, there has to be kind of a pivot point, right? A transition point where you're going from one state to another. I can only assume that something, if we say that this lady got herself together, something had to have happened with this situation with this person who's not her husband, who she's currently with. I'm saying something had to have happened if she was to get her situation together. And I'm saying at the same time, maybe she stayed the same. Because you don't necessarily have to be a part of the situation to talk about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so either way can be the case. We don't know how, what her story is, what it became. But the Most High is able to work really through whomever. Hopefully this lady did in fact turn her life around. But again, we don't know that. But, continuing on, when we look over here now, Yeshua, I think he makes these statements. He talks to her in verses 16, 17, and 18. That's not kind of like a parenthetical interjection here. This is the way that Messiah actually reaches this lady. It's the way that he actually, pulls away the veil and causes her to understand who it is that he is. And then now, she begins to think about things here from a spiritual perspective. And read again for us verses 20 down through 24.
Our fathers worship on this mountain, but you people say that in Jerusalem is the place where one needs to worship. Yeshua said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming, and you shall neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know because the deliverance is of the Yehudim. Is that it?
23
Okay.
and 24.
But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father also does seek such to worship him. Elohim is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth.
Okay, so when we look at the words of Messiah here, this is all red if you have a red letter Bible. I want to say that Messiah is, in fact, the originator of New Covenant talk. Paul didn't make up these things, even though we look at his teachings. He writes the majority of the New Testament, and when we talk about all of the different things that are said about the New Covenant, these things are kind of mostly illustrated by Paul. But when we really take a look at the words of Messiah again, just like he was on last week when he's talking about being born from above, is talking about the new covenant. When he talked to this lady about being filled with this living water, this thing that's going to cause you to flow, this thing that's going to fill you, and is going to cause you to be kind of a facilitator and propagator of this thing that causes others, you and others, to flow. He's talking about the Spirit. And so when we look over here, when he deals with this lady, who, it's interesting, we don't know, how she's responding here. We only have her words, and we don't have the inflection and when she says our fathers, well, she's talking about herself here. She makes kind of the juxtaposition where she says our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you people say that it's supposed to be in Jerusalem. I want to say that this lady is, she's in tune with her culture, I want to say. There's people who have a particular identity, but aren't really cultured, don't really care about the ins and the outs, let's say. It's possible for somebody to be Israel and don't really know about the things that you're supposed to know about. Let's just say that. This lady, she has an understanding, and she shows it. She understands that her people, the culture of the Samaritans is not lost with her. She understands that they believe that they are in the quote-unquote holy place, and that the Yahudim, they're the ones that are wrong. And she believes it. She believes it. And even though she had this revelation, I should say, in terms of the miracle that happened to her from speaking to Messiah and her being having her innermost secrets be revealed, she's still kind of on this thing over here with this separation. And Yeshua, as he's been doing the whole time, takes it from the physical to the spiritual. And he say, you worship what you do not know. Huh?
Yeah, correct her.
He had to bring things back into perspective over here. You worship what you do not know. And we worship what we know. Because the deliverance is of Yahudim. And so he had to fix her perspective. She's thinking that deliverance is from Gerizim, from the place where she is. But he has to bring it back and say, no. It's not that. But it's this. But it's not even that. It's this. Because Elohim is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship him in spirit and in truth. He say, it don't matter if you up there where you at, or it don't matter if you down here where I'm at. He said the hour is coming and now is when the true worshipers worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And so it's interesting when we think about, again, this idea of, first of all, Yeshua dealing with this lady at all and talking to her the way that he is, giving her these profound truths, helps for us to understand that the Spirit, in fact, is for all people. The thing that Yeshua came to do was to reverse the thing that happened in the garden, which existed before there was an Israel. Deliverance is of Israel. What version do it say deliverance is for Israel?
Maybe the KJV.
Did it say deliverance is for Israel? What did it say right there? He said deliverance is for Israel. What did it say?
Wait, which verse?
Verse 22. What did he say?
For salvation is of the Jews.
What version is that? Scriptures?
That's
KJV.
That's KJV.
It's of the Jews.
Yeah. Let me look at the English one.
22.
For salvation is from the Jews.
From the
It
Jews.
says from the Jews, and that's the ESV.
From. That's the idea. The idea is not to the Jews.
From.
What's New American Standard say?
From.
From. The idea is from. That's the idea. What's that? The paraphrase Bible?
The message.
No.
The good news Bible.
No. The NIV.
NIV.
You said. You
said
saying
paraphrase.
that's what NIV is. It's paraphrase.
I am got it on my thing because it's so
It's
paraphrased.
not from is.
I gotta re-download it.
The idea is from. Salvation is from Israel. It's from the Jews. It's from the Yahudim. Because salvation is from Yeshua. That's where it's from. He's trying to get this lady, first of all, to understand that her thinking is off. She needs to get herself together. As cultural as she is, she still don't understand that she needs to actually have a husband and not whoever this is that she's with. Right? He corrects her in every way. He's trying to correct her from a physical standpoint, and he's also trying to correct her from a spiritual standpoint to cause her to understand that the Most High is spiritual. There's going to come a time, and now is the time, when you're going to have to deal with the fact that Elohim is spirit, and he wants those who worship him in spirit and in truth. Now again, he's talking about this new covenant thing that he is going to enact. I want to look at Joel 2:28 through 32. Because the spirit is for mankind. Joel 2, chapter 2, 28 through 32. The spirit is for man. Go ahead and start reading that verse 28 right there.
Joel,
all the way down to 32.
Okay. Joel 2:28. And after this, it shall be that I pour out my spirit on all flesh.
Hold on a second. He says right here, the prophet Joel said he's going to pour out his spirit on a particular certain flesh.
All flesh.
He said all flesh right here.
Let's double check the word.
What the word say? It better not say cold. It better not be cold. What's that word all right there?
Cold. All, the whole, any, each, every, anything, totally, everything.
Okay. So now that we got that out the way. And he said, and who else?
And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy.
Okay, so he's saying that the Spirit's going to be poured out on all flesh. Mm-hmm. Okay, now back to you now, because Joel's talking to Israel. It's going to be poured out to all flesh. Now back to you. Your sons and your daughters, they're going to prophesy. Then what else?
Your old men dream dreams. Your young men see visions.
Mm-hmm. Keep on going.
And also on the male servants and on the female servants, I shall pour out my spirit in those days.
Okay, so he's kind of doing kind of an all-inclusive thing. We have to understand the prophet speaking to Israel. So he's not going to speak in total generalities the whole time. He said, I'm going to pour out my spirit onto all flesh. That's what he said. And then now, more specifically speaking, your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall have visions. Is this to say that the young men won't dream dreams and the old men, and the old men won't see visions? I don't think it's saying that. I don't think that's what it's saying. I think that what he's saying here is just saying these different things that are going to happen as a result of the Spirit that's being poured out. And it's not only going to be poured out on regular people, but it's also going to be poured out on the servants and the handmaids. Mm-hmm. Okay, now keep on going, verse 30.
And I shall give signs in the heavens and upon the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun shall turn into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahweh. And it shall be that everyone who calls on the name of Yahweh shall be delivered. From the Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be an escape, as Yahweh has said, and among the survivors of Yahweh calls. Yahweh calls.
Okay, very good. So it's an interesting thing that happens here. We have something that happens a lot in these prophecies. And the thing that people misunderstand when they talk about the new covenant, because there's people who talk about the new covenant and act like the new covenant didn't happen yet. But I want to say that Yeshua taught the new covenant. He's teaching it to this lady. He taught it to Nicodemus. And when we think about these things that we see over here in Joel 2:28, understanding what they are as being the new covenant, the Spirit being poured out. Pull up Acts chapter 2 and let me see what verse he say in it. Acts chapter 2. Because people need to, I just want to say that people, if you think that the new covenant It's not happened yet because of verses like this that give you the Spirit being poured out, and then within the same context, it give you the end of the world, with the sun getting dark and the blood and judgment, the great and terrible day of Yahweh, and say, well, the great and terrible day of Yahweh didn't happen yet, and it comes in the context of the Spirit being poured out. So because I don't have all this all at once, then that means that none of it happened. Somebody will say that. Somebody will make that argument.
Yeah.
The same thing as looking at Jeremiah 31 and 31 saying, well, I can't say that the Spirit's poured out because I still live in Pittsburgh and men still have to teach me. But if we look over and I'm saying that Yeshua speaking, teaching the new covenant, he's teaching this lady about the Spirit being poured out and you being filled with it. Because if we look over in
2:17. And the points in what, 21?
he said, look over in 2 and 16. Read 2 and 16.
Acts chapter 2:16. But this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel. And it shall be.
Okay, all of you just going. That's the verses that we just read that
Right.
Peter reads.
Right.
So when the Spirit got poured out on Shavuot, on the day of Pentecost, when the Spirit got poured out, he said, "This thing that happened is that what Joel talked about. This is that is what Peter said." And so whatever this is the same thing that Peter was talking about. And by the way, the sun didn't turn to darkness yet. So if anything, Peter don't know what he's talking about. I think he knows what he's talking about. I'm more likely to believe Peter than anybody who comes to talk to me about the new covenant. I'm more likely to believe what Peter said over anybody. I'm just gonna say that. Okay, and so Yeshua he's prepping this lady for this thing that's didn't happen in that time yet, but it's getting ready to happen. I guess in probably a couple of years when he dies and the Spirit comes. When Peter speaks a couple of years later. About you're sitting up here talking about Mount Gerizim and the back and forth between the Samaritans and the Yahudim. You're sitting up here bringing this up to me when I'm sitting up here talking to you about everlasting life and rivers of water. But there's gonna come a time, and now is the time when you're able to tap into this thing that's this. it's like Yeshua got this business thing. And you have an opportunity to come in at the ground floor. You got the opportunity to get stake in this situation before it blows up. If you could get this understanding that I've tried to give you about the Spirit, about the fact that the Elohim is the Elohim of spirit. And if you worship him, you must worship him in spirit and in truth. Okay, let's keep on going here. Drop down to verse 25. Because I want to say that if the lady wasn't all the way where she was supposed to be in terms of her understanding before Yeshua spoke, after he spoke, what do it say in verse 25?
Back in
back in John
4.
chapter 4,
Okay.
verse 25.
About to react on you. 25, okay. The woman said to him, I know that Messiah is coming, the one who is called Anointed. When the one comes, he shall announce to us all.
Okay, I just want to say again, it's interesting that the person that Messiah chose, I want to say he chose this lady. He sat there and waited for her to come. Probably other people came. This wasn't some secluded well. He was waiting on this person to come. Because he was able to say what he said to her, and she understood the scriptures enough. Matter of fact, this is outside of her wheelhouse, I would say. As a Samaritan, she understood things outside. She understood the prophets. She understood the writings, which is something outside of what she actually should have had an understanding about, because the Samaritans only deal with the Torah. Well, Moses spoke of Messiah. I'm saying, let me fix that. It's quite possible. It's quite possible that this lady had an understanding about the prophets. As a Samaritan, this is something that is outside, that should be outside of her common knowledge. And so she hears this, and then she goes and she's like, you are the Messiah. Again, all Yeshua did was just speak words to her. And that was the miracle. The miracle was in the words. Right? And then he immediately reveals to her, I who am speaking to you am he. He reveals the secret. Just when his mother was like, go ahead and turn this water into wine, he's like, no, it's not my time. He's sitting up here healing people, don't tell nobody. He's having these secret meetings with people about these amazing things. She has a revelation about the Messiah and the one who is called anointed, and he says, yep, that's me. I am he. I'm the Messiah. And so now the disciples come back, and like I said, they're looking at Messiah like, oh, and by the way, they look at the lady and know that she, just like she knew he was a Yahudim, they look at her and know that she is a Samaritan lady. And they saying to themselves, what you doing talking to her for? They say to themselves, they wouldn't dare say it out loud. They had to have talked about it later, because we have the situation, right? And so they immediately go. It's interesting. It's interesting to look at the kind of the maturation of the disciples. Right, because they're obviously infants at this point, right? They're just the disciples. They're just the learners, right? They come back. You know, we got the food. You ready to eat? We got the food. And he said, read 31 and 31 through 33.
It says, but in the meantime, his taught ones were asking him, saying, Rabbi, eat. And he said to them, I have food to eat of which you do not know. Then the taught ones said to each other, did anyone bring him food to eat?
This is cracking me up. Because Messiah is about the Father's business. And so, we gotta get to the bottom of this. So the Messiah is about the Father's business. And he says over, it's interesting that he says in verse 34, my food is to do the desire of him who sent me. When we think about food is nourishment, right? Food is fuel. Food is the thing that sustains us. And so that's what the desire of the Most High is to Messiah. I mean, the desire of Yahweh is what fuels Yeshua. Doing the desire of Yahweh is what sustains Yeshua. And so it started off saying that he was tired, and then he was hungry, and he was probably thirsty in his body. And this is not even to say that he wasn't. But he always is trying to bring people back into spiritual focus. He probably was physically hungry, but because of the fact that they put so much emphasis on it, he had to bring him back. But the thing that we have to understand is that the thing that Messiah wants for us to be about is his Father's business. And the way that we think about food, the way that we think about food, we're in our culture, we're probably thinking about food at least 3 times a day. We're thinking about it. When we wake up, we probably think about where we're going to eat, what we're going to eat. And then that thing keeps us going till the middle part of the day, and then we think about when we're going to eat again. And then that part gets us into kind of the getting up on the end part of the day, and we think about how we're going to eat again. But he said, my food is to do the desire of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. So he's not only thinking about the food, which is the desire of him that sent him, but he's accomplishing the work. And so we have to be able, this is what we gain from looking at this whole encounter here. First of all, he helps us to understand that we need to be understanding about the Spirit. Right? We have to understand about the Spirit of the Most High, its purpose and plan in our lives. But not only that, and understand the significance of it, which has got to be a high significance because, he compared it to food. Right? And so look at what the lady does. The lady who she got a revelation. She got a revelation. Wait, before we talk about the lady, let's deal with the fact that Yeshua speaks to his disciples. He sent them out for food, but he gives them also this lesson. He gives them also this lesson that he wanted for them to understand, and we got to understand the thing too, is that the purpose that we're here, the same purpose that they're here, is to go out and deal with this harvest, which is white, he said, and ready. Already. He said, he who is reaping receives a reward and gathers fruit for everlasting life, so that both he who is sowing and he who is reaping rejoice together, which is something that usually is 2 different things. Like somebody sows and somebody reaps. But what we have to understand is something that those people who deal in the ministry have to really understand is that, and what Yeshua is saying, he says it here, he says it over with the sower. Sometimes the person who sows isn't the same person that's going to reap. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the person who reaps ain't the same person that sows.
Right.
And so from a natural kind of, I guess, total functional situation, you sow a thing and then you nurture a thing and then you receive the benefits of that thing. But in this dynamic, and that dynamic being the kingdom, it's not always going to be like that. So we don't have to always expect for that to be the situation. Like if you're a sower, which you probably should be, you also have to recognize that sometimes you're not always going to reap what you sowed.
Right.
You're going to plan to reap what you sow, but you're not always going to reap what you sow.
And then that's when I say you gotta change the way you look at how you plant, because you're not looking on just to plan for yourself. Who are you doing it for?
It got to be about the kingdom.
It's the kingdom, so it don't. Even if I reap or not, as long as it's the good thing to do, it don't matter. As long as it's good and it benefits who it needs to benefit, it don't matter.
And when we look at what happens here, the Samaritan lady, she goes back. She go back and talk about all of the stuff that just happened to her, which was life-changing things.
Mm-hmm.
She left that water pot there.
She forgot her whole past purpose in life She was going back and forth to get water, and she first thought that she was just gonna be able to get this thing from Messiah and then never have to go back and forth. And she literally didn't. Never had to go back and forth again because she left her pot there. That was probably her grandmama's pot that she got that came from her grandmama and all the way down. And she left that pot there to go back and say what Messiah said to her. And so I think that what we have to be able to gain from this over here is that you may have a plan for your life. It's something that you think that you're supposed to be doing, that somebody taught you to do your whole life. But Messiah comes and changes that whole dynamic of things to where our life must needs be about the expansion of the kingdom. This lady went back there and talked to them people and said what she saw, all the way to the place that, it says in verse 42, we no longer believe because of what you said, for we ourselves have heard and we know that this is truly the Messiah. And this is what happens. You get a little taste of Messiah where it sparks your interest until you get a deeper look into who Messiah is, to the place where he becomes real to you. But it all starts with that spirit that we all need on the inside of us so that we're able to grow into the place that Messiah will have for us to be. So just kind of closing here, I want to just say that, you know, it's so important for us to be able to tap into that living water, to tap into Messiah and have a real significant relationship and connection to Messiah and the Ruach HaKodesh, so that you're able to do the thing that each and every one of us is saying. I'm beginning to say this all the time. The thing that the Most High is having for each and every one of us to do, no matter who you are, is to be a kingdom expander. In whatever way that you're able to know how to do it, you have to be about the expansion of the kingdom first. Let that be, like Messiah gives the example, let that be the thing that sustains you, just like food. Let that be the thing that keeps you going throughout the day, just like food. Doing the desire of the Most High and causing others to know about Messiah and his will and his ways. Okay, does anybody have any last questions, comments before we go ahead and finish up here? Okay, all right. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and be done. For now, y'all willing, we will be back on next Shabbat, continuing with our look at the words of the Master. And y'all willing, each and every one of you will have a blessed rest of your Shabbat day. And we'll say to you now, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah.